Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to Tuesday Tips for Kids Cook Real Food. We're always excited to share interesting information with you. And today we have a great back to school interview with Jessica Braider of the 6 O'Clock Scramble. Now, the 6 O'Clock Scramble is a meal planning service that helps parents, mostly busy families, get dinner, healthy meals on the table on time, because it does feel like we are all scrambled as it's coming up on that 6 o'clock hour. The kids are getting hungry, the parents are stressed out at the end of the day. And so we know in our heads that proper meal planning is the foundation of making it work. Sometimes in reality, we don't always meal plan, so we can often use a little help. Thank you so much for being here, Jessica.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
So today we're going to talk about the craziness that is back to school time and how we can continue to get healthy foods into our children and ourselves all throughout the day. But first, I want to hear a little bit about your story, because you've got a good background and maybe some letters after your name, if I remember right. What was your own catalyst for healthy eating?
Sure. So I actually grew up in a family where cooking, food, and family dinners were all top priorities. And as a young adult, I then was really into cooking extravagant dinner parties. And cooking has always been a pleasure of mine, but healthy eating didn't really become a priority until I had my own kids. And once I had those little ones, I really started experimenting with how to make my favorites healthier and how to plan more carefully and how to cook more quickly and efficiently, since I had little ones tugging on my legs.
Right, you have to. You have to figure it out, right?
Exactly, you have to figure it out. And then when my youngest was about 18 months old, I knew I wanted to make a career move, and a bunch of my friends recommended that I do something with food and cooking. And as soon as I heard that, it was like the heavens opened up and I knew that was what I was supposed to do. And so I then went back to school and became a health coach through the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. And I worked with families who wanted to be cooking more, wanted to get healthier, but were feeling really stuck. And that led me to the Scramble, and where now I get to help thousands of families every week to make meal planning and grocery shopping and making dinner as stress-free as possible.
That is so great. You know what I love about your story is it's like the flip of most people, because I feel like most people, like, we eat because we have to, and then we figure out that we should be healthy, and then we have to figure out how to cook. So it's cool that you have this background, like you knew your way around the kitchen, you knew how to cook, you know, cooking from scratch and stuff, and then you got to add that nutrition layer on top of it. So I think that's really cool hearing about too, how you came into being a mom. And you know, that's the best classroom, right? Is figuring it out on your own, and then now you can take that and help the rest of us skip the pain and suffering. Great.
Yeah, that's my goal.
So how does your own family meals and food look? What kind of things do you like to eat? And include in this how many kids you have, you know, and do you feel like this is different than the people you see around you in like normal culture?
Yeah. So I have two boys. One is 8 and one is 10. And in our house, I really tried to demonstrate healthy and happy relationships with food rather than focusing in on good foods or bad foods. So for me, it's really all about balance. A lot of people assume that in my house, there are no sweets or treats, that a lot of people think I'm a vegetarian. I'm not. But what we really do is, you know, we enjoy and savor all kinds of foods. But the vast majority is on the healthier spectrum. So we do fruits and vegetables at every single meal, lean proteins, whole grains. Sometimes I find when play dates are happening at my house, some kids will sort of look skeptically at the like homemade popcorn or something like that. But then they dig in and realize it's so delicious, and then they want more and more and more. So, and that's actually a lot like how it was for me growing up. People would come to my house and be like, why is there carrot in the tomato sauce? And then they'd eat it and it would be this revelation for them. So my goal is really to make my house a place where people can come and gather around the table and see how delicious, healthy food can really be. And so, yes, it does look a little different than most people's houses, but it also looks the same because we're eating pizza. It just happens to be homemade rather than takeout.
That is so funny. When you said skeptical, I was like anticipating what you were going to say, and I thought it would be fruits and vegetables in a snack, and then you said homemade popcorn. Like, why are kids skeptical about that? I get it, they
Yeah.
are, but
Yeah.
it's like, really homemade
I
popcorn?
know.
Is that weird? Like, but yeah, that's so delicious.
I know.
Oh my goodness. So now with your work, you worked one-on-one with families as a health coach. So I feel like you have this wealth of data
Yeah.
about what people struggle with. What did you find was the struggle that people encountered similarly or struggles over and over again?
Sure. So I think there are two. One is time. So a lot of people are just so busy and so overburdened that cooking dinner tends to slip down that priority list. And just food in general sort of slips down the priority list. And they end up just sort of grabbing whatever they can, right? And they feel really overwhelmed by the prospect of thinking about food, planning, getting ingredients, cooking with tired and hungry kids underfoot. And so they just say, forget it, I'm going to do takeout and pre-made. And then the health outcomes start to show up, and then they have to sort of figure it out. So time is a really big one. And then the other one is confidence. I think a lot of people in our generation never really learned how to cook. And so they either believe that they're bad cooks or that they just don't know how to do it and they don't know where to start. And so helping them to sort of get over that first fear is really important. And an analogy I use a lot is that I think that learning how to cook is like learning how to drive a car. That like when you start, it's all of this different information coming in from all the different sides, and you have to check your mirrors and you have to make sure the radio's turned off, and you just don't even know, sort of it feels really overwhelming. But the more you do it, the more natural it becomes and the more second nature it becomes, and then it becomes fun. And so for people who are really feeling scared, that's one of the analogies that I use a lot is like, just think about it as like you're a 16-year-old learning how to drive a car again, and you'll get to the comfortable part again, but just stick with it for a little bit.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. My 13-year-old asked me the other day, Mom, is driving fun? And I'm like, no, not at all. I don't like it. But some people, I mean, I get some people do. So I think that's like the other end of the equation for those of us who have been at it a while. Then it becomes not so fun. And you have to figure out, it's a new challenge to figure out how to infuse new life into it and not the doldrums. But yeah, I was just reading some brain science yesterday about how believing you can do something like makes you more likely to first try and second succeed at it. Yes. So even just to hear like, yes, like confidence, I love that you use that word, because I say all the time, yeah, people didn't learn how to cook in our generation and it's really hurting us. But yeah, if we could just have some confidence that we can, that it's possible. And like, what's the worst thing that could happen? Well, the worst thing that can happen is it's totally a failure. You waste some food, which isn't good. And then you get takeout, which you were going to do anyway.
Right.
So like, that's the worst possible thing. And it's not that bad.
Right. And you learn from what you did wrong so that the next time it won't go so badly.
Mm-hmm. And like those 16-year-olds starting out in a parking lot, you should start out with simpler recipes, right?
Exactly.
Do you have a favorite kind of simpler recipe that you recommend to people to get their training wheels on?
Yeah, I actually do. So one of my favorites is a skillet tomato sauce for pasta, because pasta is like an easy entry point. You know, like most people know how to boil water and put some pasta in a pot. And so then while that's boiling, you can, chop up some vegetables, start them sauteing, and then build on that. And it's a really fun recipe to just sort of learn how to build flavor, learn how to saute, all of those little incremental, important, basic lessons. That's one of my favorites, is to just, and everyone loves pasta, right? So
yes, true. And even to dial that back one more is just to use a jarred pasta without too much junk in the ingredients and add a few vegetables.
Yep.
Right? So it's like pre-training wheels, anything to get a win, anything to build confidence.
Absolutely.
Is a great idea.
Yeah, I've had clients where that was absolutely what we started with. Like, go and get that, really simple, no sugar added tomato sauce, and then we'll add in some chopped spinach and see how that goes, Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden they can say like, I made dinner, and then they're off and running.
Yes, it definitely feels good. Okay, so because it's back to school time, we're focusing additionally on the challenges of food away from home, that we're sending our kids out into the world. for most of us, hot lunch is not the most nutritious thing. And so I'm sure there are people watching who might have done hot lunch for many years, and for the first time they're thinking, man, I wish I could make the switch, and I'm just super intimidated. I don't know what to send for lunch. Or there are people who, you know, maybe they've been doing Lunchables, or like there's all sorts of easy outs for lunch that are not so nourishing for our children's brains. Like I believe we can totally do better. So what do you recommend as like the food for lunchtime choices that's both doable and nutritious?
Okay. So a couple things that I recommend. One is to cook extra the night before and send leftovers. I mean, that's really like the easiest thing you can do, right? Because you've already made it, and then you just reheat it, throw in a thermos, or if it's a salad or something, just throw it in the bento box or whatever, and you're good to go. I also have found that my kids really don't mind room temperature food. So a lot of times my kids will, you know, throw together a quesadilla or something like that, and then they'll eat it room temperature when the time comes. So, you know, checking in with your kids about that stuff can be really helpful. There are other ways that I like to make it easier, though. One is prepping at least some of the components ahead of time. So on a Sunday, chopping up those veggie sticks, or throwing together, you know, little packets of dip, you know, hummus or a yogurt dip or something.
We make an awesome ranch dip in the first intermediate class of Kids Cook Real Food. So hopefully people can have that on hand.
Perfect, exactly. Even pulling together little snack packs, you know, of some crackers and cheese sticks or something like that can be really helpful. And then the other thing I really like to do is batch cook ahead of time. So I'll make big batches of muffins or whole grain English muffin pizzas or frozen burritos, and they'll just be stashed in the freezer. And then my kids can just pull what they want for that day, throw it in their lunchbox, and they're out the door. So batch cooking and then leftovers are really great ways to go.
Now, you just said your kids can pull, so let's talk about how we can get kids involved. Like, how do you communicate to them what's available and what's acceptable? How they can do they pack their own lunch?
They do. My kids, so the last school year was the first year that they packed their lunches every day, and it was life-changing. It was so great. I highly recommend it.
It is.
So what I did is I sat down with the boys right before school started, and I made a list with them of all of the foods they'd be open to eating for lunch. And then when I was making my grocery list for the week, I would just pull some things from that list to throw in so that I could rotate through and it wouldn't get too boring and they wouldn't get in a food rut of any kind.
Now, did you have any sort of veto authority to say things need to be healthy or things need to be balanced? Because I can see some lists going in a direction that I might not want them to go.
Totally. So so what we're doing and the Scramble is actually offering this back to school is a lunch packing guide. And it's a really cute printable that I've posted on the inside of my pantry, and it lays out what a healthy lunch looks like. So it's, you know, one main dish and examples of what that is, and then a fruit and a vegetable and examples of what those can be. Some fun ideas for extras that are healthy, like homemade popcorn or some dried fruit or some trail mix, and then your bottle of water. And so they'll just look at that every day and like make sure that they're checking off all those boxes, and then they'll be good to go. So so with the Scramble this year, you can get that really great printable that it makes life so much easier.
Perfect. And we will make sure to include a link to where to get that wherever this video is shared. And I know definitely you can get to the Scramble at kidscookrealfood.com/scramble. Very simple. And then, you know, I'll just make sure that back to school stuff is all hooked in there. So the kids are packing their own lunch. They have some kind of structure, and then you have lots of ideas for within the structure, which is great. Again, psychology says that when kids are making choices, they feel more in control. That means they're going to feel more positive about what they're doing, right? When we just tell them what to do and they feel like they don't have choice, you know, that just causes developmental problem, right? They're not growing into independent little human beings.
Yeah. And I also will add to that what I noticed is that my kids ate a lot more of the lunches that they packed themselves. then like the amount of food that would come home before was sometimes made me want to cry, because food waste is one of my pet peeves.
Yep.
But when they packed their own lunches, they were much more likely to eat all of it.
That is so fascinating. I'm not sure if I've noticed that, but I haven't been paying attention. But I do need to share one of my rules that we've had since my kids were tiny, and this came from me being a teacher. So when I was a third grade teacher, it was in a Catholic school, and the kids ate in the classroom. So that was like a really interesting education for me about what parents packed and what kids ate. And I watched the kids take their lunchbox and dump so much food into the trash, and I thought, this is not good. So I told my third graders, and I tell my kids, everything goes home. And, for my family, and we use a lot of reusable stuff too, so this prevents things that I don't want being thrown away, thrown away. So literally everything comes home, which means if they do have an orange or something, like, they bring the peels home because they just don't even go to the trash. But I always taught my third graders, that's a communication between you and your parents. Parents need to understand how much they have time to eat, which is less than they'd eat at home always, because they're talking and chatty and they're time crunched. And then what they like and don't like. I said, it's like a little love note to your mom. If you bring home your sandwich every single day, and you might forget to tell them, Mom, I really don't like mustard. But if you bring home your sandwich every day, they'll talk to you and realize, oh my goodness, you don't like mustard, or whatever it is, So I feel like that's always been a rule in our house, so that I can figure out how much to pack. We've got, I think my going into second grader eats more than my going into fifth grader.
Right? Isn't that crazy?
So it's a boy and a girl, and they're just, you just never know how much kids will eat and how chatty they'll be until you start experimenting with that.
Yes.
And then
that's a great tip.
And another tip too for me is like grilled meats and cooked meats are so easy cold. We put like cold chicken on a salad anytime as an adult, so it's not that weird. Or even pasta, we eat pasta salad and we don't think it's weird. So like, I love thinking about things that we can eat for dinner that are good cold, so I don't even have to deal with the thermos in the morning.
Totally.
So mornings, speaking of mornings can be so stressful. So obviously packing lunches at night is always a good idea, but we have to feed them in the morning too. So how do you make the morning scramble? It's like the other end of the 6 o'clock scramble. How do we make that easier so that everyone has a nutritious start?
Yeah. So in our house, I do a lot of make ahead breakfasts. So what I do is on Saturday mornings, we have a ritual in my family, except during soccer season, which is a whole nother.
That messes everything up.
But for most Saturday mornings, I make a big batch of a breakfast food. So whole grain muffins or scones or egg sandwiches, granola. And then we'll enjoy that all together as a family. And then the leftovers get frozen. So I have a running stockpile in my freezer of favorite breakfast foods. And that way, in the mornings, my husband's actually in charge of breakfast. He can say, which of these things do you want? And they'll just call out. And sometimes he'll supplement with eggs, because we're a big fan of eggs in our house and they're really quick to cook right on the spot. But he'll just call out the different options and they'll all call out what they want, and breakfast is ready to go. And that's actually also a feature on the Scramble, that you get 8 dinner suggestions, but you also get a make ahead breakfast option every week, so that you can stockpile your own freezer to make it easier.
That's so cool. So instead of looking in the freezer and seeing your Eggo waffles and your toaster pastries, right, and all these like convenient but not nutritious foods that are offered at the store, you're just making your own using whole grains and healthy fats. And I bet there's some vegetables in your muffins.
There definitely are.
For sure, making ahead. I'm in a terrible breakfast rut many times where it's like eggs or oatmeal.
Right.
Sometimes I feel like that's all we feed our kids. At least it's nourishing, but I'm sure it gets a little boring. So I know this summer, at the end of last school year, I was just burnt out on breakfast. And so this summer, my bigger kids have had at least one breakfast a week that they're in charge of. And sometimes they'll make ahead, and sometimes, they'll make that morning. But it's been really interesting to watch them do it. But making ahead. And, I just want to tag onto your making ahead on Saturday morning to get people out of their box. If you think, oh, my Saturday mornings are crazy, I can't do it. Sunday mornings are crazy, I can't do it. There's no rules that say you can't have breakfast for dinner, or that Saturday afternoon can't be your make ahead time, or Wednesday evening. Like, You know, there's
Yes.
always time when you're making food anyway, and it's all just about making a quadruple batch.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And getting those kids who know how to flip pancakes to flip
Yeah.
those pancakes while you're making the rest of the breakfast for dinner or whatever it may be. Like, there's always a way. It just takes some planning, which is
Yes.
where people like you come in and help
Right.
out.
Right.
So you've mentioned the 6 o'clock scramble a couple times, and this is your meal planning service. I know that it uses technology to get families in and out of the kitchen faster, but still with nutrition at the forefront. But can you kind of explain the system and how it works practically?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, what happens is each week our members receive an email, and in that email is a list of our 8 meals for the week and the make ahead breakfast option. And then you can print directly from the email, and you get your recipes and your grocery list that way. Or you can go to the site, and we have what we call the kitchen. And it's basically where you can select which recipes you're going to make. And all of our main dishes have a side dish suggestion that goes along with them. So it's all the whole meals planned for you. And you tick off what you're going to make, and then it will automatically generate a personalized grocery list for you. And then you can add whatever else you need, you know, your cereal, your eggs, your milk, whatever. And then you can either bring that to the grocery store on your phone, or you can print it out and bring it on paper. And then you can refer back to the site for the recipes, or again, you can print them out. And we really try very hard to make as many of our recipes ready in 30 minutes or less. So that's really quick and easy. And then another feature that I think will really appeal to your community is that every recipe has a do ahead and delegate section where you can talk about how to pre-prep, but you can also pass these things on to your kids after they take the cooking lesson and now know how to chop vegetables. They can be doing that pre-prep for you either on the weekends, or as you're, you know, taking care of other things, they can start that dinner prep for you.
I love that. I have to say that that's my weakness. I feel like nearly every dinner I get into the thick of it, and my kids are probably having a lot of fun together, and I don't want to interrupt them. Like, even as the kids cooking teacher, I have lots of weaknesses. And I start thinking, man, I could have delegated that and that and that. And this would be so much easier right now. But it's like the hindsight always. Right. And so, man, if someone else made that list for me of what I could delegate, I feel like I could just tack that up on a bulletin board and be like, sometime between lunch and dinner, you know, especially in the summer, like, or just right after school before you play, like, do this 10-minute task. But it's all about thinking ahead and planning ahead. And man, for someone else to do that brain work for me, that is awesome.
Great.
And I love that it's adaptable too. So people can say, I don't like, you know, it's not my favorite. This feels not my favorite. This feels not my favorite. We're going to take these out and put in something else. Yeah. That's so great.
Yeah. Now, and all of our recipes are also labeled. So if you're a gluten-free family, you can find your gluten-free. If you're vegetarian or vegan, kosher, I mean, the list goes on and on. So you can really tailor it to what your family's dietary needs are, so that you can really personalize it and make it your own.
Perfect. That's so important in today's world, especially. So now the one topic we didn't cover is snacks. And I can imagine that some of these make ahead breakfasts work well for snacks, but do you have any other snack time magic for either the snacks we have to send to school or those like kids who are very hungry right when they get home?
Yeah. So what we do in my house is I keep everything really at kid level, so that they can get it themselves. And, you know, I've really worked with them on, you know, I'm trusting you to make good choices. And, you know, I will check in and make sure, but I'm trusting you to be the responsible party here. And so, as I said earlier, we have fruit and vegetable with every meal. So they know that they've got to find a fruit or vegetable to go with whatever other snack they have. Sometimes they'll do, you know, they'll make themselves toast with some cheese. Sometimes it's homemade popcorn, but there's always a fruit and vegetable. And then the other thing that I instituted a couple years ago is that in the hour and a half before dinner, you can only have fruits or vegetables. There are definitely some hardcore parents who can say no food at all. I can't do that. So it's only fruits or vegetables. And that way, even if they are filling up on something, it's something I know that I feel good about.
It could be part of dinner anyway.
Exactly. And so that way, I know that they're really going to get the good nutritious stuff when they need it. And also when they get home from school, they're often like super hungry. And so it's a great time for them to start shoveling those carrots into their mouths,
Yes, exactly. That's so funny. I mean, the hour and a half is exactly what I tell parents to do too. And we do say no food before dinner. And then the exception is always, if they're getting hangry and they're going crazy and their blood sugar is crashing, you don't break the rule, but we say, oh, here's an appetizer. These are the veggies I was going to serve at dinner.
Yep.
So really just starting dinner early. I mean, it's all semantics, right? But the point is we should teach them to get a little hungry, but obviously we're human and we need to be flexible and understand when they're too hungry and they're getting angry. I hear a lot of parents, I mean, I love the at kid level and trusting your kids. Remember, they're 8 and 10, you guys. We don't probably trust the 3s and 4-year-olds quite yet. They need a little more overview and perspective, but I do have parents say, oh, like my kids are always getting into the chips and the goldfish and stuff. And I'm like, the answer's kind of obvious, right? Like if you don't want them to eat chips and goldfish, you cannot buy chips and goldfish. So just have to throw that out there. I'm guessing that your spread is 90% healthy food, if not 100%.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's a lot of, and both my kids know how to make popcorn now, so they can always fall back on that. But yes, it's a lot of whole grain options, a lot of protein rich options,
and fruits and vegetables.
Yeah.
So when you say you're trusting them to make good choices, it's not exactly good choices about what they eat, but kind of quantity, how much they eat. If they're eating the same thing every day, or if they're pairing, crunchies with crunchies, right? Grains with grains, you're trusting them to figure out a good balance, but not trusting them like, hey guys, here's a bunch of candy and a bunch of chips and an apple. What would you like?
Exactly.
That's kind of setting them up for failure.
Yeah. So, the deck is definitely loaded.
Exactly. So that's where the parental control comes in, but it doesn't feel like control to the kids, which is totally where the magic comes in. They feel independent, but you've already made the choices about what's available because you have the money and you go the shopping.
Exactly. Yeah,
that's fantastic. So you can find the 6 o'clock scramble at kidscookrealfood.com/scramble. And do you have any sort of free trial or free sample?
Yes, absolutely. So there's a 2-week free trial where you can sign up and try it out for 2 weeks. If you like it, great. We're so excited to have you as part of the community. And if it doesn't work for you, that's okay.
Yeah, these meal plannings, I always say they're really personality based.
Yes.
And so if you have a personality where you want quite a bit of help, but you also want to be able to make some choices and take things in and out, this one, may be a really good one for you. And knowing that Jessica has a background in nutrition, that these are going to be balanced meals. So again, a lot of the brain work of, oh goodness, do I have enough vegetables? Do I have a protein? Like you don't have to think through that, which is a beautiful gift to busy moms and busy families.
Yes, exactly. Take that away. Take that one off your plate for you.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Jessica. And the community at Kids Cook Real Food always appreciates hot tips to make life easier and more nutritious, especially in this crazy back to school time.
Yeah. So thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And everyone who's listening, of course, get those kids in the kitchen, get them cooking. There's never a bad time to get them in except when they're too hungry. So any Saturday morning, any time after school, if you've got a few weeks of summer left, kidscookrealfood.com, we will teach them how to cook. And kidscookrealfood.com/scramble. We'll get everything planned for all of your nutritious meals. Thank you. And I will see you next week.
Bye.